You're just freeloading off the family, miss. Always have. That's what my father said. At the dinner table, in front of everyone. No smile, no sarcasm. Just years of quiet dismissal boiled into one public sentence. No one defended me. Not when they showed Lazero's promotion slideshow. Not when I sat beside the kitchen, my name missing from every card. They forgot I was the one who wired the money. They erased me from photos I paid to create. But the next morning, my father's boss stood up, looked me in the eye, and said, "Good morning, ma'am. Are you leading today's review?" I didn't answer with words. I opened my folder, due D seal and all. That's when the room went silent. If you've ever been the one they overlooked, until they realized you outranked them, drop a 1 in the comments. And if you've never had to prove your worth twice just to be heard once, drop a 0. You're lucky. Let's talk. Because silence doesn't always mean surrender. Funny how I funded the party, but still needed GPS to find my own seat. The first thing I noticed was the smell. That old mix of lemon polish and wood varnish that always clung to the banisters, stubborn and artificial, like the people inside. The porch light blinked once, hesitated, then buzzed weakly to life. A moment too late. Just like always. I stepped out of the rental car, my heels crunching gravel, eyes scanning the facade that hadn't changed in over a decade. Nothing ever really did in this house, except who was worth noticing. Inside, the air was warm, heavy with rosemary and pretension. Every corner was staged. Linen napkins, stemmed glassware, a slideshow screen prepped and paused on Lazero's Big Leap. Someone had even placed white lilies on the centerpiece. Mom's way of saying we're classy without having to prove it. No one greeted me at the door. I moved through the hallway with the practiced silence of someone long edited out. The third floorboard still squeaked. The photos on the wall hadn't changed. Baby Lazero with cake on his nose. Lazero in his varsity jacket. Lazero shaking hands with a congressman I never met. Not a single photo of me in uniform, not even from graduation. Delora emerged from the kitchen like a theater usher, apron spotless, face staged. "Well, look who finally showed," she said. No hug, no real welcome. Just that thin-lipped smile she wore for neighbors, and IRS agents. I gave her a nod. "Good to see you too, Mom." Her eyes darted toward the living room. "We've got a slideshow queued for Lazero's promotion. He's senior lead now, you know." "Impressive," I said. My voice came out level, too level. She gestured vaguely. "Go on in. Grab a plate if you're hungry. I wasn't sure if you'd even land on time." I had texted her last week, told her I was flying in. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. The dining room looked like it was set for a wedding. Candles, place cards, even a microphone at the end of the table. I scanned the seats. My name wasn't on any of them. I didn't expect it to be. I slid into the empty chair near the server cart, half hidden from view, perfectly placed for someone meant to watch, not be seen. From there, I could see everything. Lazero was holding court, wine glass in hand, talking animatedly about leadership in scalable structures. Orville paced near the windows, phone clutched like a weapon. He didn't look at me. Not once. Dinner began with applause, for Lazero. Delora raised a toast that went something like, "He's always been focused," and "We knew he'd lead someday." The table nodded in synchronized pride. Someone mentioned Stanford. Another chimed in about his work ethic. I cut my chicken in silence, chewing slowly, swallowing thicker air. At one point, Delora leaned in and whispered, "Sorry we forgot to send you the invite. We figured you were too busy with your army things." I didn't bother correcting her. There was no forgot. Orville tapped his glass next. "To Lazero," he began. for proving that merit, not shortcuts, is what makes success. Lazaro smirked. Well said, Dad. Orville continued, casually brutal. Some people take initiative. Others just coast. Freeloading works only until people wise up. Laughter. Some loud, some choked behind napkins. My name wasn't mentioned, but I felt the room turn toward me. I didn't react. I set my fork down, reached for my water. Calm, measured. But inside something splintered. Not a scream, not a break. Just silence collapsing. I stared at my plate, the gravy catching flickers from the candlelight. This wasn't the first time. It was just the loudest. Lazaro leaned toward the mic again. I always say showing up matters. Ideas are nice, but execution is king. The projector beeped softly. Slide 1. Lazaro's college graduation. Then, him shaking hands with a board member. Then a startup pitch photo. I remembered that one. I had cut the first check for that startup under my LLC. Quietly, no names attached. In the photo, I'd been standing to the left of the whiteboard. Now I was gone, cropped out. Only the edge of my sleeve remained. A watch I no longer wore. A memory no one cared to keep. No one clapped harder than Delora at the next photo. Let's also thank Leora, she chirped, for organizing tonight's details. Food, flowers, all of it. The room echoed with polite applause. Leora ducked her head modestly. I raised my glass, eyes fixed on hers. She wouldn't look back. Weeks ago, Delora had asked me to wire a few thousand. Lazaro's new car, plus catering. But she didn't want Orville to know. I'd sent the money through Leora's account. Discreet, unseen, like always. To Leora, I said calmly. The final slide clicked into place. Lazaro standing beside a mock server stack, pointer in hand, beaming. As if he'd invented the very code it ran on. As if I hadn't built the original framework 4 years prior. I excused myself. In the hallway, I pulled out my phone, logged into the secure portal. The next day's internal agenda loaded. Classified review, cyber protocol oversight. Under presenters, my name sat at the top. Principal advisor, DoD liaison. They didn't know. I stared at the hallway photo wall again. The same space where I had always been missing. My hand brushed the edge of one frame, paused. Then I turned away. Back in the dining room, the lights dimmed for coffee and desserts. Orville stood to refill his wine. You know, he said, loud enough for the table to hear, not everyone's cut out for the real world. Some people, well, they prefer fantasy, structure, obedience. I sat down quietly, stared straight ahead. I didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't need to. Not tonight. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just be in the room. I'd own the damn table. Colonel Whalen just checked in. She's not on your guest list. She's running the meeting. I heard the words echo down the marble hallway as I stepped through the main entrance of Pinnacle Defense's regional headquarters. The floor shimmered, polished to perfection, reflecting my boots like a mirror made of judgment. A young receptionist fumbled with her headset, glancing between her monitor and the starched man beside her who whispered, "She's the one?" I didn't slow down. My uniform was pressed, medals aligned, brass buttons catching sunlight from the glass ceiling above. Nothing dramatic, just regulation. But in a building obsessed with sleek suits and logo lapels, I might as well have walked in carrying thunder. The guard by the elevator straightened as I passed. "Good morning, Colonel Wayland," he said, then tapped his earpiece. "She's here." "Thank you," I replied, not pausing. There were murmurs behind me, the soft hum of hierarchy realigning itself. I could almost hear the calculus. Who had spoken over me at dinner? Who had snickered at Orville's toast? Who had passed me the breadbasket like I was the help? I reached the 23rd floor. The reception desk outside the executive war room buzzed with nervous intent. An assistant stood as I approached, smiling tight. "Colonel," she said, eyes bright but respectful. "Your nameplate already set. You're at the lead quadrant." I nodded once. Inside, the war room was all frosted glass and subdued power. A long table stretched beneath pendant lights. Seating arranged like a corporate throne room. I walked past the empty chairs and found mine, front left corner. Brass lettering glinted. Colonel Keziah Wayland, due de-liaison. I set down my briefcase. Didn't look up, didn't need to. The room hadn't filled yet, but I felt the air shift behind me as the elevator dinged. Doors opened. Lazero's voice floated in first. "I heard the liaison was some Pentagon guy. Probably gray hair, stiff shoes." He stepped into view and froze. Right on cue. His gaze hit my rank first, then my face. He blinked. Beside him, Orville's mouth opened, closed. His eyes narrowed, then darted to my nameplate like it might blink away if he stared hard enough. "What are you doing here, dressed like that?" he asked. A question soaked in disbelief, not concern. I didn't smile. "Your meeting starts in 20 minutes. You should get ready." I walked past them. Lazero pivoted too slowly, stumbling a half step as I brushed by. I could hear him whisper, "Is she part of the audit team?" Inside, I reviewed the morning brief. Slide 5 still held my framework. The comms overlay I had built with no credit, no attribution. It was unchanged, lazy theft hiding behind buzzwords. I flagged it mentally, like pinning a target. A notification pinged on my secure tablet. Unusual login detected. Access point, Pinnacle HQ. File, Internal Contract Review, version 2.pdf. Only one person here had both motive and audacity. Lazero. I didn't reply, just flagged the breach for audit and locked my screen. The room began to fill. Shannon Murphy, the CEO, entered with the silence of command. She scanned the table, her eyes pausing briefly on mine. No nod, just acknowledgement. Behind her came the VPs, engineers, liaisons in tailored wool. Most offered polite glances my way. Some didn't know where to look. Arthur entered late. Orville always liked to arrive last, like royalty. He froze when he saw where I sat. Before he could speak, Shannon moved to the front of the room. "Let's begin," she said. Then, deliberately, turned toward me. "Good morning, ma'am. We're honored to have you here." Every hand paused. Coffee cups hovered. Eyes snapped toward me, like strings being pulled taut. I nodded once. "Let's start with the integration metrics." I stood, folder in hand, and projected the updated framework. Slide 1, System Architecture. Slide 2, Security Failsafes. Slide 3, Access Control, my original structure, replicated verbatim. Slide 4, Layered Redundancies. Slide 5, the module, mine. I paused, then turned toward the team. This communication overlay was submitted by IDM under MRW Unit 43, encrypted channel, time-stamped 11 months ago. I said calmly. File hash confirms origin. Lazero's pen stopped scribbling. This framework has been used without proper accreditation. I have submitted documentation to legal and will be reviewing realignment of credit post-briefing. The room held still. No one blinked. Shannon looked at me, then at the slide. "Understood," she said quietly. A hand rose, Greg from PR. I thought, Lazero designed that? I turned my head. You thought wrong. The silence that followed was crisp, measured, respectful. Have you ever discovered that the people who raised you also tried to erase you? That kind of silence that's not innocent, but chosen. If you've ever been kept in the dark by those who should have protected you, Drop a comment number 7 below. Now, let's see what happened next. Arthur finally leaned over and whispered, "So, you're here to observe?" I looked directly at him for the first time that morning. "No," I said, "I'm here to approve." Funny thing about signatures. They leave fingerprints too. The first words I spoke that morning weren't to a person, they were to a file. As the war room filled with executives and advisors in carefully ironed suits, I sat quietly at the head quadrant, tapping through layers of documentation like I was flipping through old receipts. Except this wasn't nostalgia, it was evidence. Lazero walked in 10 minutes early, like he always did when he needed to prove something. He didn't look my way, not directly, but he talked louder than necessary to someone from procurement. And then I told the client, this framework won't just protect your data, it'll anticipate breach behavior. That's what makes our model different. Our model. I let the word sit in the air like a bad smell. A few seats down, Orville hovered over a printed agenda, pretending to read. His jaw was tight, his eyes evasive. Delora hadn't shown up yet, likely strategizing her next move. She never entered a room without calculating the audience. The projector warmed up with a soft hum. Lazero stood, adjusting the cuffs of his navy blazer, and stepped toward the screen. "Thank you all for coming," he said, as if this was his courtroom. "What I'm about to share is the culmination of years of development, iteration, and team effort." Slide 1 clicked into view, a high-level system overview with lots of arrows and buzzwords. I'd seen it a dozen times, because I had drawn the first version. Slide 2, security structure. Slide 3, integration tiers. Slide 4, dynamic encryption, nearly identical to the test module I had submitted last year through a secure military channel. Then slide 5, the framework. The room hushed a bit. Heads tilted in polite attention. "This," Lazero said, "is our crown jewel. A proprietary communication overlay developed for high-threat environments, designed right here, in-house, from the ground up." My hand moved without thinking. Calm, deliberate. I stood. "Interesting," I said, loud enough to slice the room in half. "Would you mind going back one slide?" Lazero blinked. Sure." Click. The slide reappeared. I walked toward the screen, folder in hand. "This diagram," I continued, "was submitted to the Department of Defense 11 months ago under encrypted channel, tagged MRW Unit 43. I opened the folder and pulled out a printed document. The federal seal gleamed at the top. Below it, my name, signature, timestamp, blockchain-verified metadata. I handed it to the COO without looking at Lazero. "This is the original, the one this slide was lifted from." A beat of silence, the kind you hear just before something breaks. The COO studied the paper. "This matches the structure entirely. File hash confirms origin date. Same encryption tier." Lazero tried to recover. "It's possible we had parallel development. Sometimes ideas converge," I cut in. "Sure, except this version," I tapped the slide, "still contains the variable labels I used during simulation, including one labeled KAZPROT01. Doesn't get more converged than that." A quiet gasp from someone near the back. Delora slipped in at that moment, her smile too wide, like she'd walked into the wrong play and was trying to improvise her lines. The COO looked at Lazero. "Do you have an explanation?" Lazero looked at me. But there was no rescue coming. I pulled out a second document from my folder. "This," I said, placing it flat on the table, "is the initial strategic investment agreement, signed and notarized, made through my personal LLC 3 years ago. I funded the prototype that became this. A few people leaned in. The logo at the top of the page matched Pinnacle's pre-launch identity. The signature at the bottom? Mine. You may not have remembered, I said, voice steady, because I signed quietly, behind the scenes. But I never signed away authorship. Lazero's face was flushed now. Orville's lips were pressed so tight they were nearly white. Across the room, a PR manager raised her hand. Just for clarity, Colonel, are you stating that this core module wasn't developed by Pinnacle's internal team? I'm stating, I said evenly, that it was developed by me, invested in by me, and then quietly absorbed into a company that had more press than memory. Delora stepped forward, smoothing her dress like that would smooth the room. Sweetheart, she said too softly, maybe we can talk privately. I didn't move. She reached into her handbag and produced a small white envelope, slid it toward me. Just something for yourself, she murmured. A thank you. Maybe something nice to wear. This doesn't have to go further. I didn't touch it. Did you just attempt to bribe a Department of Defense officer during a classified protocol review? I asked. She froze. Lazero stared at the envelope like it might catch fire. I picked it up, opened it slowly. Inside, a receipt for a $100 cash withdrawal from the company's internal guest discretionary fund. Interesting, I said. Let's add embezzlement to today's agenda. The room didn't breathe. I returned to my seat. Calm, not triumphant, just a present, fully, visibly present. For the first time in a decade, no one dared crop me out. One more breach, I said softly, and it won't just be a family matter. It'll be federal. Orville paused mid-stir, the espresso spoon clinking once, then resting against the porcelain. He stood by the self-serve station like it was a shield, all focus funneled into his half-full cup. I didn't blink. We were alone, for the first time since the signatures, the projection, the sealed proof. I'm warning you once, I continued. You keep playing under the table with government contracts, and I will stop playing entirely. He turned toward me slowly. There was something brittle in his eyes now. Not rage, not guilt, just the creeping realization that I no longer needed his permission to stand here. You wouldn't do that to your own father, he said. Not a challenge, not quite a plea, just tired entitlement. I adjusted my jacket, straightened my shoulders. I wouldn't do that to a father, but I would absolutely do it to a man misusing federal funds and compromising a classified integration contract. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Silence was the one language we always shared. And today, it was his punishment. I walked back into the room as the team returned from break. There was a chill in the air now, figurative and literal. No one laughed anymore. Small talk had shrunk to whispers. People were watching, processing. My place at the head quadrant remained untouched. The nameplate, Colonel Keziah Wayland, gleamed under the soft overheads. Lazero returned last. His smile tried to regrow, but it didn't reach his eyes. He fumbled with his tablet as if hoping it could shield him. I sat, opened my folder again, and began the second half of the review. This next segment covers cross-tier clearance mislabeling, I said, clicking forward, which, if not properly audited, leads to operational risk. My eyes didn't move from the screen, but I felt the unease ripple through the room. Everyone knew what I was really saying. Lazero had accessed files he was neither cleared for nor qualified to interpret. Someone coughed. Another shifted in their seat. 10 minutes later, a junior analyst from IT leaned over to the COO and whispered. The COO's brow furrowed. He turned to me after the slide ended. We've confirmed. he said carefully. The login you flagged this morning. It traces to a device registered under L. Wayland. There it was, said aloud. Lazaro looked stunned, genuinely this time, not performative. He opened his mouth, closed it, then half raised a hand like a student caught cheating mid-exam. I thought the folder was just the background for the next quarter. It was classified, I said, and you weren't cleared. Shannon, the CEO, didn't speak, but her silence was louder than any reprimand. And then Delora appeared again. I didn't see her enter. I just felt the change in air pressure, the subtle scent of perfume designed to linger without announcement. She walked over, heels soft against the carpet. Her face held the same mask she wore to school award nights, present, painted, unreadable. I just wanted to, thank you, she said, pulling something small from her bag. Another envelope. This one is thinner. Sweetheart, I know this week's been tense. I don't want you to feel excluded. She offered the envelope with 2 fingers, gentle like a peace offering. Just a little something for your time. I didn't touch it. Is this another discretionary fund? I asked. Her face twitched just once. Of course not, she said quickly. I opened the flap. Inside was a gift card. Starbucks. $100. The label read, reimbursed through external liaison budget. Guest per diem. KW. I held it up slowly. The room watched. Funny, I said, how every form of kindness in this family comes with a reimbursement code. Then I folded the card in half, deliberately, and set it on the table in front of Shannon. Add it to the compliance report. No one said a word. Behind me, the main wall screen powered on for the final segment. The CEO cleared her throat. Before we conclude, she said, we have one more item. She stepped over to the side wall, pulled back a cover, and revealed a new plaque. Brushed steel, matte finish, understated but centered. National Partnership Heroes. Beneath it, 4 names. Mine was first. The photo next to it. My commissioning day. In full dress uniform. Silver insignia shining beneath blue light. A ceremony I'd never mentioned because no one in my family had shown up. The caption beneath read, Invisible until it mattered. Then irreplaceable. The room stood still. Lazaro sat like stone. Orville closed his eyes. Delora just stared. No one applauded. No one moved. Which was perfect. I didn't want noise. I wanted silence. Because that's what they gave me for years. And now they could sit in it too. You cropped me out of every picture, so I rewrote the caption. The projector clicked, loading the next slide. Lazaro stood tall at the front of the conference room, remote in hand, smile fixed like a corporate mask molded to his jawline. The screen behind him glowed with a new layout, his official system protocol overview. He cleared his throat like a man who thought he still held the floor. Next up, he said smoothly, our security communication interface, built in-house for resilience and adaptability. I always say, success is about showing up, not just having the idea. Polite laughter rippled. Not genuine, nervous, thin. I didn't move yet. I waited. Slide 2 appeared. A high-level protocol diagram. My original overlay, still intact down to the indentation styles in the code. They hadn't even bothered to reformate it. My jaw tensed. There it was, publicly claimed, professionally stolen, and now projected as someone else's triumph. I remembered the moment I handed over the investment check 3 years ago, before the company had a logo, before it had a floor plan. Delora had smiled then, sweet and firm. Let's keep your name off the paperwork, darling. Just for now, she had said. We don't want to confuse things. Wouldn't want the investors thinking a military rank means control. I let it slide. Back then, not anymore. I rose, deliberate, silent, eyes turned before I spoke. That slide, I said, voice even, was authored under IDM MRW Unit 43, submitted via encrypted channel to the Department of Defense 11 months ago. Lazaro paused. Excuse me? I stepped forward, opened my folder, removed the notarized source code document, and held it in both hands. This framework, I continued, was designed, tested, and validated on government servers. Every variable, every failsafe, down to the diagnostic hashtags, is mine. The room froze. I turned to the COO. This copy is certified, I said, handing it over. Timestamp and metadata match the original. If you compare it to slide 2, you'll see the file integrity is unchanged. That's why the label still says K-Way Sync at the top corner. A slow murmur passed through the crowd. Lazaro didn't speak. His eyes darted like trapped prey, searching for a door that didn't exist. I'd like to show another slide, I said. Shannon, the CEO, nodded. Go ahead. I clicked my tablet. A new slide flashed onto the screen. The original group photo from Lazaro's startup pitch, the one they had edited for the slideshow. The cropped version was already familiar. This one was not. There I stood, far left, hand on the whiteboard, facing half-turned toward the camera. The watch on my wrist is unmistakable. This was the day the prototype was pitched, I said. That watch, serial marked and gifted by my commanding officer, is visible in the cropped version you used yesterday. A gasp. Someone whispered, "She's in the original?" I switched to the next slide. The invoice from the funding transfer, signed from my LLC. And this, I said, is the check that paid for that pitch, written under silent capital. At the time, I let my name be removed from all public materials. I looked straight at Lazaro. But today, I'm done being invisible. He opened his mouth. I raised a hand. Don't. Have you ever been pushed aside, only to be needed later when it's convenient? That quiet ache when you realize you were never part of us, just part of the solution. If you know that feeling, drop a comment number 9 below. Now, let's see how this ends. The room held its breath. Shannon stood. Colonel Wayland, she said, formally now, would you be willing to submit your original design files for permanent record inclusion? I nodded. They're already logged with federal compliance. Copies can be provided. The COO reviewed the document. All metadata checks out. This is hers, fully. Lazaro sat. He didn't argue, didn't even blink. His body slumped like a man whose spine had been quietly removed. I returned to my seat, not triumphant, just steady. Delora didn't speak. Orville stared at the floor. As the room released a collective breath, I heard a soft voice behind me. Colonel! I turned. It was Drew, mid-level engineer, not one of the executives, but sharp. He used to sit in my training briefings during my first advisory term, back when no one here remembered my name. He leaned closer. I always thought it was you, he whispered. The code had your structure all over it. They just hoped no one would ever prove it. I met his eyes. He didn't smile, but he nodded. A silent apology from someone who never got to speak up. The session ended quietly. No applause, no closure. I left the war room through the east hallway, one rarely used by guests. The lights hummed above, flickering faintly over the framed company timeline mounted along the wall. Founders, advisors, investors. 3 names. Mine wasn't among them. I stopped in front of the glass. In the lower right corner, space had been reserved for supporting contributors. The plaque was blank, save for a tiny logo. I reached into my inside pocket, pulled out a Sharpie I always kept, uncapped it, and wrote in small, decisive script beneath the glass, "Correction pending." Then I walked out. "You always asked what I brought to the table. Now you're sitting at mine." The knock came at exactly 6 p.m. Not early, not late, just calculated. I opened the door and found them standing as if they'd rehearsed their positions. Orville holding a bottle of wine with two hands, like an apology that didn't know how to speak. Delora with a glass dish wrapped in foil. And Lazaro just behind them, his eyes already glued to the entryway tiles. "Smells good," Orville offered, his voice more gravel than warmth. "We didn't know what to bring." "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They moved carefully, as though the floor might judge them. I watched them take in the space, clean, orderly, lived in. The shelves were lined with books, not binders. The walls carried no framed medals, no plaques, no photographs of military ceremonies. Only one abstract painting above the mantel, shades of indigo bleeding into burnt sienna. Delora paused in front of it for longer than necessary. "This is interesting," she said. "It's about distortion," I replied. Dinner was simple, tomato bisque with sourdough slices. No one asked why. No one dared suggest anything was missing. They sat at the table I bought with my first full commission check, walnut, hand-polished. Delora placed the dish beside the soup without asking where, then sat down. Orville kept glancing toward the bookcase, toward the stack of policy journals, and one slim framed copy of a DARPA white paper. My name small but visible beneath a security clearance stamp. "I didn't know you read policy," he muttered, not quite to me. "I don't," I said. "I write it." The room went silent again. We moved through the meal slowly. Lazaro complimented the soup twice. Orville asked about the lamp on the sideboard. Delora complimented my organization like it was the last neutral thing left to say. I let them squirm, let them live in the dissonance of having once called me invisible, now seated in the middle of what I'd built. After dessert, store-bought lemon tarts, too sweet. I leaned back, folded my napkin, and placed it squarely in the center of my empty bowl. Then I waited. Delora broke first. "We didn't know," she said, voice low. "What you were doing, what you had done, how far you'd gone." I nodded slowly. "You didn't ask." Orville reached beside him and unwrapped the frame he'd brought in. It was the article from Pinnacle's executive hallway, framed in brass. My photo, full uniform, the quote beneath, "Invisible until it mattered. Then irreplaceable." He cleared his throat. "This hangs in my office now," he said, "next to your brother's first prototype certificate. Should have hung your commissioning photo there a long time ago." I didn't soften, but I did reply. "Thank you." Lazaro fidgeted with the edge of his chair. His voice came quiet. "You weren't just ahead of us," he said. "You were somewhere we didn't even know existed." I studied him for a moment. The man who once stood next to my work and called it his own, now barely able to look me in the eye across a table I paid for. "It was never about being ahead," I said. "It was about being." A pause settled, not awkward, just full, as if something sacred had finally been acknowledged. I stood, began clearing the dishes. Orville jumped up to help. I didn't stop him. In the kitchen, while he stood beside me drying bowls, he finally said it. I was wrong. 3 words, not loud, not framed by ego, just honest. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. After the kitchen was cleaned, they lingered. We sat again in the living room. The conversation drifted. Church friends, weather, a neighbor's dog, nothing and everything. Delora caught sight of the small clay sculpture near the windowsill. "Did you make that?" No, I said. A recruit did. It was a thank you gift. She nodded. Quiet. She didn't touch it. When they left, Orville hesitated in the doorway. Next time, he said, let us bring the main course. You just did, I answered. I watched them walk down the hallway, shoulders closer than when they arrived. I didn't cry, but I did breathe. The next morning, back at the Defense Directorate, I briefed a new recruit on protocol integration. She looked fresh, ambitious, sharp eyes, anxious shoulders. Does it ever get easier? She asked. Being overlooked? No, I said, but it gets quieter. She raised an eyebrow. That's comforting? I leaned back. Sometimes, I said, justice isn't loud. It's not about revenge speeches or courtroom gasps. It's about stillness, the kind of stillness where no one dares question whether you belong. She stared for a second, then scribbled furiously in her notebook. As she left, she turned. Did your family ever say sorry? I smiled, not out of pity or pain, just memory. They came for dinner, and that was enough. I no longer need their validation. They sat at my table, in the home I built, beneath the light I no longer need permission to turn on. After everything, what remains is peace. The kind of silence that once meant dismissal, now standing as a symbol of quiet power. What I've learned is this. The moment you stop waiting for permission to exist is the moment you truly begin to matter. Kindness doesn't need applause, but dignity must never be up for negotiation. Those who once looked down on you will lower their eyes, not because you sought revenge, but because you stood your ground. Have you ever been underestimated, erased from your own story? Share your experience with me. Tell me, what was the moment you rose, not for their praise, but for your own truth? And if you're still waiting for that moment, believe me, it's coming. If you'd like to hear another story about quiet justice and unshakable self-worth, subscribe to this channel. I've got more to tell.